Well, good morning to all. It's a fine morning. I'm trying to think of an original way to greet you, viewer, but let's say you're welcome. And you're welcome too, Pat. We're both welcome.
Thanks very much, Jude. Hi.
It's good to be alive. It's good to be alive. Okay, let's try to make life miserable for as many people as we possibly can, apart from viewers, as many political figures as we can. Now, I was driving my car this morning, and on it was the Nolan show, and on it was Chris Donnelly, who, in my opinion, is one of the sharpest political commentators around. And he was being asked about the Westminster Foreign Affairs or something, is it? What was it?
I think it's the Northern Ireland Committee.
Northern Ireland Committee at Westminster says that there should be two joint first ministers officially, and none of this first minister, deputy first minister. Now, why do you think, Pat? First of all, why do you think they would say a thing like that at a time like this?
Come on, Jude, you know as well as I do why they're doing this. There's a psychological thing. And by the way, there's a part of me resents it, but here I'll explain why I resent it. When the Nationalists were in the minority position, they were called deputy first minister. And I remember Paisley made the joke that McGuinness was his deputy, even though they had the exact same powers. Now, the reality is they have the exact same powers. So, in real terms, you could say they are joint first ministers. But there's a real thing there about the denomination of who's the first minister. It usually indicates who is the larger party and who represents the most people. So now suddenly, when the Unionists are no longer in control, the designations are going to be changed to suit the Unionists. No doubt about that. It's a sop to Unionism because they can't face the prospect of being in a subsidiary position to a nationalist. So now they're going to be joint first ministers. So a part of me resents that. But in the world of real politics, I'll live with it on the basis of Stormont comes back because, Jude, let's be honest, it's an admission of reality that things have changed.
Well, that's a very rational sort of dissection of the matter. As I say, I was listening to Chris Donnelly this morning on the Nolan show, and his take on it was that he agreed that yes, they both have the same authority, and it would be logical to call them both joint first minister. But his point was that up to now it has always been the Unionist first minister. And in order to reassure or to show that you actually believe this notion of equality in office, that they should keep it joint first minister as has been voted by the electorate. Let Michelle O'Neill serve out her time as joint first minister, and then go to having shown to the world that Unionists can accept their nationalist neighbours as equals, then go and call them a joint first minister. I thought that was a very even-handed sort of way of looking at the thing.
That's a better answer than I gave, and I would love with
that. You could be very cynical. Well, not a bit cynical, actually. It'd be very realistic. The only reason that's coming up is that the Westminster Committee or subcommittee is trying to smooth the path for Unionism to rejoin Stormont. I think that the reason why the committee has recommended this is so that the DUP can sidle back into Stormont, waving it above their head and saying, see what we got? We're not going to be anyway second mate.
Yeah. I presume that's part. I remember Chris Heaton Harris said last week, we're now at the final stages. We're now at the final stages. I presume there's going to be SOPs, there's going to be money. Jude, if you recall last week, teacher, there was, I think you might actually posted, teachers in Northern Ireland, their salaries way behind teachers on the mainland. They're also, there's strikes coming up on the health service. Fire people, I was going to say firemen, but that's not politically
correct.
Fire people persons are now fire persons are now way behind their whatever, are way behind the people on the UK. So, Jude, good old Northern Ireland ain't so good anymore.
Yeah. Anyway, I see it as a blatant bit of an effort to smooth the path for the DUP. And frankly, the idea that Westminster would recommend this and be telling us in a way what way we should be thinking, either it's shame on us that we're not able to think about these things for ourselves, or it's shame on them for having telling us about our business, what we should be doing and what we shouldn't be doing. What's the good in having a local parliament if you're not allowed to make decisions about that kind of thing for yourself? It's the old colonial attitude. Anyway, Pat, you had an item here about you saw Lord John. I was thinking Long John Silver, but Lord John Alderdice was on Mark Carruthers. I didn't see it now. You said he was very good. What was good about him, besides the fact that he's got a very nice beard?
But Alderdice, is not a rabid nationalist under any shape or form. That is for certain. And he's been very sort of middle of the road all his life. He is a Catholic, isn't he? I think he is. I'm not sure.
I didn't think of that at all. Yeah.
I'm not even certain. But anyway, let's get. But
is he going to confession?
Who knows? But
well, I think that's an important question for us interviewers to ask people.
Well, Mary McCallum asked Martin McGuinness, does he still go to mass or something, didn't he? Or did he go to confession? Anyway, here's the thing about Lord John Alderdice. He said Britain has no longer any emotional bond, the political establishment at Westminster has no emotional bond whatsoever to Northern Ireland anymore. He says, and the article I read then, he says, Northern Ireland was unloved, uncared for, and not really. Nobody in Westminster give a monkeys about it anymore. The days of unionism having bite are gone. They can bark as much as they like, but they don't seem to have a lot of bite anymore. And I think all these things are now playing. And basically, if you want to distill down, John Alderdice is saying there's a new reality out there. The days of unionism calling the shots are gone, and that they better get used to the reality that they are not loved anymore, and they've played the orange card just too often, and they've pissed too many people off. That's my summary of what he and my own way of what he said.
Pat, tell me this: would you not have known that yourself already?
Absolutely. But hold on a second. Me and you saying Jude is one thing, but here's a guy who's considered part of the establishment in Northern Ireland, who's considered a very middle of the road man, saying it, Lord Alderdice. You're not Lord Collins, and I'm not Lord McGart.
I am in my own house. My wife prefers to good Lord regularly.
Good Lord.
What are you doing now?
Anyway, what did you? Yeah, but Jude, you see, there's a whole history here. You look back at one stage. Harold Wilson referred to them as spongers.
Yeah,
and he said, and he made a couple of other disparaging remarks. Then you can shift almost forward. Well, Margaret Thatcher eventually, who was probably the most unionist British Prime Minister of all, got eventually pissed off them. Theresa May, I would say, would willingly string up Arlene Foster, given half a chance. And Rishi Sunak, Jude, as far as I can see, has absolutely no emotional attachment to Northern Ireland whatsoever. And I'm going to repeat myself now. I think people like Sammy Walsh, Ian Paisley, and others have so overplayed the orange card and the unionism card that the people at Westminster now just couldn't give a monkeys anymore. But they couldn't give a shit.
It's only levels, I think, Pat, I agree with you, but I think it's only levels of deepness of contempt, not contempt, but, dislike. Because if you cast your mind back to the first, I'm trying to remember what his name was, one of the first British proconsuls to come over here. Who was he? What was his name? The guy.
Well, what do you call it? Well, there's Peter Brook. There was Wally Whitelaw. There was Tom King. There was the big farmer guy, James Pryor.
For him. I can't remember. It doesn't really matter, because the story about him that everybody knows is that when he visited here and he got onto the plane, he said, "What a bloody awful country. Somebody bring me along."
That was Reginald Modeling.
Reginald Modeling.
He says, what a bloody awful place. Get me a large Scotch.
That was at the very start. And look at the number of secretaries of state that have gone through since then. And it's just deepening. So the fact of the matter is, we know this ourselves. The world and his mother knows it. But as you say, it's when it comes out of the voice of somebody that appears to have authority or has the title Lord after him or for his name, that adds sort of heft to it or a bit of weight behind it. I think nobody knows this more completely than the DUP. And that's why you get these wild statements from the likes of Sammy Wilson and Ian Paisley sort of denying reality because it's too rough. What was it? T.S. Eliot says human beings cannot stand too much reality. Cannot bear too much reality. It's true. If you were in that situation where you saw this inevitable slide in terms of your side and you knew there's nothing you could do about it, and you seem to be just, you could see it slipping away from you, especially after Brexit. You know, you'd be looking around for defiant statements to make or distractions to erect or anything that would save you from contempt of the public gaze.
Absolutely. And you know, I think that's where the reality has to kick in. You know, you put all these different things you were saying about the deputy first minister. I presume there's going to be some sort of legislation or attempted legislation to, I know it's a belt and braces job. Like I keep pointing out the Good Friday Agreement, no matter, and I'm contradicting you as well, by the way. The constitutional position cannot change unless there's a majority of people in Northern Ireland voting for it. So all this crap about the protocol changing the constitutional position is bollocks, absolute rubbish. It doesn't. If tomorrow morning the thing is introduced and we're still ruled from Westminster and our MPs still go from Westminster to claim a few trade rules in regard to bringing in tomatoes or something as changing the constitutional position, give us a break.
Well, you don't change the constitutional position, but it's like, what would you say? It's like a plane that's going to take off, and you know it's going to take off not too long. But this is a question of making sure that the surface ahead is as smooth as possible. So if you have an economic, and you see, Jim Allister's written this, I've said this before, if you have a good economic single unit of Ireland, it makes it so much easier to have a good single political entity called Ireland. So that's what bugging unionists. They're aware that these are signs and steps towards a change in the constitutional status. So I sort of have sympathy with them in that.
But Jude, that is like saying a match makes a forest. You know. Or a one tree makes a forest. It doesn't, like there's a whole lot of things, that and any society is not perfect, but they suggest that we are going to be ruled by the EU because of something about trade. Like that to me is absolute bollocks. It's so overplayed. It's ridiculous.
They keep referring to that as the EU colony.
Colony. I remember Sir Geoffrey's famous one that you cannot partition a country against itself. We are a bloody island, and they support partition of this island.
No,
remember he said the fact that the Unionists would be divided away from the mainland. Jesus,
Stephen Nolan echoed that very statement this morning. You can't have a border in the middle of a country. You can't have a border in the middle of a country. What do you think the last 100 years have been about?
Imagine having a border on an island. It's so ridiculous.
Especially such a big one as we have.
Yeah.
There's loads of room for everybody.
Loads of room. What is it? Jude, it's about 350 miles or something.
About that,
Have you squiggled in and out all the way from Muff or North Donegal over to Dundalk?
Yeah. Okay. Take us on to another one there, Pat. Have you any others in mind, or should I?
The Irish Times have gone big at the minute, and I think they're surveys and their Ipsos or whatever polls, and apparently they're going to be doing a whole series of articles. Now, I started reading this morning, and I read, I sort of lost a worldly love. There's that many facts and figures there, so I was never very good at things like that. But anyway, here's a couple of points that they're saying. The reality is, while unionists don't like to admit it, discussions are underway about Irish unity. And to paraphrase you, they can bury their head in the sand all day long, but the discussion has started. But the Irish Times, and I think it's a university from Notre Dame. They've been having a go at all this for quite a while, and over the coming days they're going to be doing these analysis pieces. Yeah. And one of the things I wrote down, Jude, basically they're working out there's all this thing about identity politics, of course. But they said what's coming up on the doorsteps is economics will play a massive role in any future United Ireland. 43% said they would vote for unity if they would be. Sorry, they would not vote for unity if they would be worse off. This is in Northern Ireland.
Sorry, Pat, I'm going to correct you. I'm going to correct you a wee bit. 43% said they'd be less likely to vote.
Okay, fair point.
Yeah. There is a difference.
Yeah, and I think it's just 30 in Northern Ireland, 38% of people, that includes 23% from a Protestant background, said they would vote for unity if they would be 3,500 better off. So, even unionists are going to be influenced by economics. But basically, what they're saying is, the big point they're saying, it's clear that right now the terms haven't been met for calling a border poll. But I keep saying that right now, I wouldn't be calling for a border poll. Neither, I'm going to put words in your mouth as well. I don't think you'd be calling for a border poll right now until we see the facts and figures and the reports and all the rest. There's no point in calling for a border poll when we don't know what we're voting for.
I think there is a point in calling for a border poll when we don't know what it's for. I think it's because they want to. I honestly believe this. I believe the media, like the Irish Times, want to portray a story where an awful lot of people have no time for United Ireland, and even though they don't know what it's going to be like. But you look at the figures and you'll say, "Oh God, look at that! There's 43% if they're going to be not as well off, they're less likely to be in favor of constitutional change." So build up a story constantly of people who are saying, "No, I'm not going into United Ireland. No, I'm not going into United Ireland." So give them obstacles and then say to them, would you still do it? I think it's an effort to show people that only realists say no to United Ireland. It's the dreamers, it's the daft, emotional ones that talk about a United Ireland. I mean, if you think about the way they ask those questions, they are saying, would you be in favor of United Ireland if there was money involved? Money coming out of your pocket. Well, listen here. Try this one. You go into a shop, Pat, and you see a lovely bottle of 12-year-old whiskey, right?
Yeah.
And you put your hand around it, and you're just going to put it in your bag, and the guy says to you, those aren't free. And you say, is that right? Yeah, you have to pay for that. You'd probably say, oh God, that's pretty. Oh, pal, here you go. We pay for things we don't want to pay for them. We'd much rather get them for nothing. Yeah. So what's the point in saying, 43% of people will be less likely to vote in favor of United Ireland than would be the case if it was for that didn't cost them in their pocket? Of course. Nobody wants to give out money. If they could get into United Ireland without it, it'd be great. So I think there's several things going on. One is, as you pointed out, none of us know what, in fact, I'm doing a column for the Editor News on this, that we don't know what a United Ireland is. So what's the point in bringing it up? Well, I think the point in bringing it up is exactly the kind of poll that we're looking at, where you have lots of voices that are saying, United Ireland, no thanks, not under these circumstances, not under these circumstances. So you begin to get that in the air, and people begin to think, there's a bit of a con, but what a way is up, we're dreaming. The realists have worked it out, and we shouldn't be doing it. Is that cynical?
There's a certain element.
That's a rhetorical question, incidentally. It says, I'm a bit cynical. I say, I'm not a bit cynical, I don't think. So,
not at all. I noticed that. No, the old journalistic trick. Hey, Mr. Collins, are you still beating your wife? And then you say, no, I'm not. Yesterday, Dr. Jude Collins confirmed he no longer beats his wife. There is a certain element of truth, the way the question is set up. In other words, you're caught at the start. But having said that, Jude, I don't totally agree with you either. I think the question, of course, the framing of questions are designed to give a certain answer. But here's the other thing. I certainly would not be voting for anything until I saw the details. I think that, or I've seen the details. I would think that there's an onus, and I keep wondering why Fianna Fáil in particular run away from us, until a civic assembly is set up. Get the experts, the the accountants, the forensic guys who go through the books, get the lawyers, get the constitutional frameworkers, get the historians, get the political units from the various universities, get them all into a room and give them, say, right, you work out the economics, you work out the politics, you work out the law, you work out, and then distill them down. So on each, on politics, here's the 5 things. On the constitution, here's the 5 things. Put it to the people and say, this is the reality of what's going to happen in the event of United. Jude, I don't know what's the final outcome of the economics. I don't know what the constitutional position is. It going to be a parliament in Dublin, a parliament in, don't know the political situation, know how many votes or how they're going to vote and all this. Jude, until that's all worked out. But what I am saying is, if you tomorrow morning, Dr. Jude Collins said, right, Pat, here is everything on the table, I would be calling for what do you call it, border poll then, when I know what I'm voting for.
Exactly. And the people, that's my very point, that these people keep churning out these opinion polls about a united Ireland. And yet we haven't, none of them, I haven't heard any of them saying the first thing we must have is a citizens' assembly. We must have the information.
Yeah.
As you say about how the constitutional arrangements, will there be a parliament in Belfast? Will there be, maybe there'll be a parliament in Belfast, Galway, Dublin, Cork? You don't know. What about the education system? How would it work?
Exactly.
What about the justice system? How about the maintenance of a British identity for Unionists?
But should we need a sort of a citizens' assembly before we start voting?
Absolutely. And why is it? Why are they dodging this?
That's the
big
issue.
Again, I think they're deliberately dodging it and throwing up stuff that will discourage people.
Yeah, but Jude, I don't give a monkeys about what's said in any poll at any given time in the Irish Times. I want a citizens' assembly, and I think that's anybody that gets involved in that whole thing that's taking their eye off the ball. We should be, and me and you in particular, because whatever wee bit of influence we have some. We should be calling every blinking time for a citizens' assembly. Let's get everything down on paper. Let's get drilled down into every issue that's that will be affected in any. Put it all out there, and the only people can do that is a government-led civic citizens, where they're experts on hold or there to sort of drill down into everything and all the key areas, and then what their findings, I presume with the agreement of the political parties, are then put to the people for a referendum on unity.
Couldn't agree with you more. The politicians like Leo Varadkar, there's no point in Leo Varadkar saying, I expect a united Ireland during my lifetime. Forget it. Tell us what you're talking about, what kind of united Ireland you have in mind. And secondly, I think the media really should be stopped doing this. They keep on, these guys in the Irish Times are going, this is a whole rolling series of ones that they're going to do year after year. What the hell? Yeah. I welcome it in the sense that it's good that people are talking about a united Ireland, but I really, really get very annoyed when I think that they're actually sidetracking us and sort of bombarding us with the number of people who wouldn't be in favor of it, even though none of us know what it's going to be like. So I think we should start all our podcasts, Pat, holding up a sign saying, we want a citizens' assembly.
Citizens' assembly now. What do we want?
It should be our starting point and our finishing point. Okay.
Absolutely.
What else now? Oh yes, Trump. Apparently, Trump is way ahead in the polls. That is kind of alarming.
Well, apparently, 5 out of the 6. That's unbelievable. America ahead of, and 5 of the 6 swing states. He's considerably ahead of Joe Biden. That's unbelievable. So here we have a man who is openly sexual assault. He has assaulted women. He supports that white supremacist. He's been impeached twice. He led an insurrection. What else has he done? Yeah, what is at least 4 or 5 criminal cases running against him, and he refuses to accept the result of the last election, and he said, he could well win the next election. What does that tell us about him? And by the way, just think about what would have happened in regard to the war in Israel? What would have happened to the war in Ukraine? Apparently, by the way, some of the stuff he's now pandering, as some experts said, and I think it was in the Irish Times as well, said when he came in the last time, he was surrounded by people who didn't know what they were doing. The next time he comes on, he'll have people who have been down the system. Apparently, they are going to there'll be widespread deportations, including people who make anti-American statements in the media. People, even birthright people who, their mother and father came to America illegally, and they were born in America. Even though they were born in America, he's planning to throw them out as well. So, the McCarthy era of the 1950s is going to seem like a picnic.
Well, listen, I just that point you make about not being an American citizen, even though born there, I want to come back to that.
Yeah.
But he's talking about people as vermin. In other words,
that's
he's
referred to his opponents as vermin.
His opponents, vermin, and that's personal opponents and political opponents. And he's talking about, sort of getting rid of them, exiling them. I don't think he can do that, can he? He can't do that. That's not. He wouldn't be able to do that, would he? Not legally, anyway.
The American president has got to help him. The only thing you would hope that his power would not be untrammeled. That the Democrats might hold sway in the Senate or the houses of the electors. So if the Democrats held the Congress and the Senate, they could block a lot. But the president has a lot of what we say autonomous powers as well, as we seen the last time with Trump.
Yeah, well, we certainly. I wouldn't want to see the guy back in the White House, but I console myself with at least one thing, and that is we've already had him for 4 years, and we've survived him. Now you might say he should have been impeached. You might say, well, other things, but we survived him. That's the main thing. I remember thinking the same thing with Ronnie Reagan. When he was elected, we survived him for the first 4 years. Oh, God, if we survived him for that, we'll probably survive him for the next 4. But to come back to that thing, very interesting, where you say that people who had been born in America could be, deported.
Deported, yeah.
The fact that you're born in the south of Ireland, as I understand it, doesn't mean that you're an Irish citizen or you can get an Irish passport.
Yeah, is
that right?
It used to be,
is that right? Do you know?
Yeah, as far as I know, that there was some sort of clarification or legislation there just some
about
time
10
back.
years ago.
It used to be that if your mother and father were traveling through Ireland and they stopped at Shannon Airport and you were born in Ireland, you were entitled, even though you only stayed there 10 minutes. If you were born there, it's a ridiculous statement I'm making. But even if you only stayed for 10 minutes on Irish soil, but if you were born in Ireland, you're entitled to Irish. That is gone. Apparently, if I understand it correctly, that no longer covers you. There has to be some sort of formal thing now that you're an Irish citizen.
Well, I would ask myself the question, why did they produce that law? And the reason is, of course, I think it's to do with immigrants. They don't want immigrants. Say you have a woman from Africa who comes 6 months pregnant and has her child here in the south. They say, oh, well, we can't say that person is being an Irish citizen just because they were born here. Well, frankly, I think it's the thin edge of the wedge to say under certain circumstances, certain people who are born in Ireland can't be considered Irish citizens. I just wouldn't have that any more than I would be in favor of saying pay for some of your NHS, but not for all of it.
Let me take you on a bit further because it's someone I actually wrote an article about it for my column in the Daily Mirror. We grew up in a Letterkenny. Let's get this clear. Letterkenny in the late 50s, early 60s was a sort of monoculture society. We were all white. The only difference was the Catholics and the Protestants. And the town in Letterkenny was about 95% Catholic. So our minority community was the Protestant community. But here's the thing. They look like us, talk like us, work like us. The only difference was on the Sunday morning. They went to one church, we went to another. And walking down the street, I defy anybody to tell me, oh, he was a Protestant, he was a Catholic. It just doesn't work like that. So there was no big issue there. And in fact, Letterkenny, there was no, as far as I was aware, there was no sectarianism. People just got on with their lives. Right. You go up to Letterkenny today, Go drive down the main street if you can get it, because gridlock everywhere. But anyway, it's now known. A local wag I heard the other day calls it Litter Kenya. There's so many black people there, right? And it's so different.
That's quite
Now,
smart, must
here,
say.
Litter Kenya. I thought it was rather good actually.
Yeah.
But anyway, here's the thing, Jude. If somebody comes up and says, "Look, wait a minute," and by the way, I mean reasonable people with a legitimate point, and somebody turns around and says, "Look, wait a minute, I have no problem with these people, but I've got a problem with this. Our schools are overcrowded. You, you're sitting now for 7, 8, 9, 10 hours on a hard seat up at the A&E because you can't see a doctor. You can't get a house. The rents are going up because the demand. So, plus the fact that there's asylum seekers coming in and they're getting all the houses and they're getting whatever. Is that person a racist, or is that a legitimate complaint?
Well, I don't. First question to ask is it a legitimate complaint? Are there no houses because immigrants are coming here? Are there or fewer jobs, say, because there are more immigrants coming into the state? If that's the case, then you have to look at that very seriously and say, well, we have to put a limit on the number of immigrants coming in. If we can't afford them, we've got to cut our cloth to, meet our needs. So I think I'd ask that question very carefully, because there is a tendency for people to say, oh, we have a very bad health system, therefore it must be because of all those immigrants coming in. I'm not sure that's necessarily the case. In fact, if you stop to think about it, these immigrants coming in, many of them are very highly qualified and are doing jobs that they shouldn't be doing. They should be doing jobs much more, using their skills as nurses or doctors or whatever. If they were given jobs, wouldn't they be feeding into the whole economic system? Wouldn't they be paying taxes?
Absolutely.
And in fact, that should, help the state rather than hinder it. So I think that there really should be a careful look at that. And as I saw that program, which followed the riots in Dublin, and at least one or two politicians said, I know of no indicator that says that because of the influx or the number of immigrants who come in, that there's likely to be, for example, more crime. This idea that you've got all these young males and they're just waiting to go out and rape people and kill and so on, that's absolutely wrong. That their rate of crime, they commit crime, of course, but their rate of crime is no higher than that of the indigenous people, ourselves, or yourself. I don't live in your state.
Apparently, someday this week, apparently Roderick O'Gorman, I think he's a Green Minister, but apparently he's going to announce that Ireland is officially full. We have simply no more room for asylum seekers. We have every bit of spare thing. Jude, by the way, I heard the other day that there are people in Donegal making 100,000 a week. They're getting housing asylum seekers. They're getting £70 per night per person. And if you've got a couple of thousand people, at £70 a time, it's a lot of money. But anyway, the other side of the story, you're 100% right. Some time back, I listened to two Syrians on RTs, and I mean, it's about 3 years ago. One was a vet, and the other was a pharmacist. And they were in direct provision, and they couldn't get working because he said their qualifications weren't recognized. Right now, I'm told there's a place about 3 minutes from where I sit now called E&I Engineering. It's renamed. And apparently some of the Polish guys who came here, by the way, the Poles have moved up the social ladder in Ireland. Poles are now very, very well respected. A lot of them have a technical background. And these guys are great engineers and draftspeople and electrics and all this sort of stuff. And now the Poles they're almost part of the community now and accepted. But yet when they arrived 15, 20 years ago, they got a lot of this crap as well. That's so right. I don't know how we work all this out, but I suppose the argument is that some people are sort of saying, look, wait a minute, I can't get a doctor's appointment, and when I go to A&E, there's 300 or 400 people sitting there, and 10 years ago, this wasn't happening. And maybe that's the basis. Maybe it was.
Somebody should simply sit down and do a study. There must be loads of academics who've been interested in this sociological sort of situation and say, okay, 20 years ago, was there the problem with provision of housing? the problem with the provision of health or whatever before these influx of immigrants. Okay, that was the situation then. Now, let's look at it since these people have come. Now, has it changed? Yes. If it has changed, is that because of these immigrants? They've got to look at the bloody thing and analyze it before they start making these statements like, "Oh, the place is full. We can't have any more. We don't have the capacity to take more immigrants." Have to see if immigrants are necessarily the problem. Maybe it's another thing that's a problem, or maybe it's just the way we're dealing with the immigrants, as you say, the guy who was the pharmacist, the guy who was whatever. Their skills aren't being used. I'd like a far further investigation of it, because it's too easy to say these people are coming in, the state's going to hell, therefore we want to stop these guys. I wouldn't buy that. I find that too easy, and that's the reason that I'm looking at the time. We're really short. That's the reason why I'd say we should look at more thoughtfully. I was cut off the last day, Pat, because I wasn't looking at the time. So I want to apologize to our viewer for that. So are you sharing my apology? Is this a joint?
Absolutely. I think it was British intelligence, Jude.
Oh, yes, I forgot. I might have guessed. It was a spooks again. They can't handle the truth, Pat. They can't handle the truth.
Okay,
Pat.
Tom Cruise. All the best, Jude. See you, Pat.